Oregon, and we covered this with Thom actually on the air some weeks ago, what was happening in Oregon and the unfettered, unlimited campaign contributions in the state, which might surprise people a little bit. And it was hard, even though you had significant majorities of Oregonians in favor of some sort of limit. It was hard to get anything through the legislature. Online with us right now is Jason Kafoury, spokesperson for Honest Elections Oregon. Jason, how did you end up breaking the log jam and actually getting something done on this topic? And I say it in part on the chance that could inspire or give lessons to anyone else around the country who's thinking about engaging in democracy advocacy.
Yeah, as I was saying there before the break, the legislature hadn't done anything good on campaign finance reform here in Oregon since 1864. We had this ripe moment where, after Citizens United and after this massive donation by Phil Knight, I think that the Democratic leadership realized they needed to do something on campaign finance reform. The governor said she was going to make it a priority. And so we drafted several bills, a couple on disclosures, one on contribution limits, and one on an actual referral to the voters, SJR 18, that would explicitly state that the state constitution does not prevent you from having limits on expenditures, contributions, and having top donors disclosed. So there was a fight for months about whether what the contribution limits bill would look like.
No, it looked like not only was that bill going to die, but so was the constitutional referral was going to die.
Yeah, so exactly. So, and then, as people around the country may remember, the Oregon Republican Party abandoned the state, literally left the state capitol over a cap and trade global climate bill that for a week and a half almost, I think it was almost 2 weeks, they left the capitol right at the end of the session. And I think the momentum behind watching the Republicans leave, not for, moral issues, but for straight money-related issues to their big contributors, I think that turned enough people in leadership in the Democrats to push that constitutional referral out. So remarkably, literally in the last 48 hours, we passed the referral out of the Senate, and then we got it out of the House.
And now it's going to be before the voters.
Now November 2020, it's on the ballot. So,
and I thought it was so interesting because that was the thing I noticed, and in fact, the thing I talked to Thom about, and the thing I talked to some other members of the media about, was that what I noticed was that when Republicans walked out, and that was a national story, one of the reasons why we're coming back to it now. Thom had actually asked to do it right afterwards. At the time I was in Hawaii, but it was a national story then, and what was remarkable to me, and by that I mean worthy of being remarked upon, was they didn't walk out over same-sex marriage. They didn't walk out over something about the right to keep and bear arms, unfettered from regulation.
Abortion.
They didn't walk out over abortion. They walked out 2 times. The first time was over taxes for the wealthiest Oregonians, and the second time was when the timber industry was pushing back on climate change legislation. They're pushing back on something that, again, would impact their very biggest donors. And it was an example of where there was some people power, had a chance to get something done, and thought, maybe to inspire a few people, or at least give people an update from a story that was covered some weeks ago.
Yeah, the other big development here, Jefferson, is that we also simultaneously have passed limits in the city of Portland and in Multnomah County, and those limits are now up to the Supreme Court. We have a completely different makeup of Supreme Court than we had in 1997. A lot of them, I think all of them now have been appointed by a Democrat governor, so it will be really interesting to see. And that hearing on the initial brief is due. The briefs have been filed, the initial briefs have been filed, but that hearing before the Supreme Court is on November 1st. So, we here in Oregon have a dual strategy. We're trying to win at the courts or at the ballot to get campaign finance reform. And, we got a whole bunch of people to file amicus briefs in support, including the ACLU, who had long opposed any sort of limits on money in politics. And in fact, in their brief, they wrote, they, quote, reconsidered its previous absolute opposition to any regulation of campaign finance and now recognizes, quote, the harms of an unregulated election system, including favoring the views of the rich to such an extent that the views of less affluent Oregonians are largely erased from the political sphere.
I would actually...
That's pretty powerful stuff.
I would like to actually talk to the ACLU about it. For years, there were rumors that that there was Koch money that had gone to the ACLU, that one of the reasons for their libertarian take on, their sort of anti-government take on campaign finance reform might be connected to, well, that was the source of conservative money they were still getting, and if you suggest that, some strong supporters of the ACLU would say that's blasphemy. How dare you even suggest that any of those rumors, any of those written stories are accurate? But I would like to ask the ACLU about the change of mind, because I know that's been a big deal in the dynamic. Want to get to our callers, Jason, but where can people find out more about what's happening about this, and might want to bring you back when we know more about what happens to glean some lessons that folks might be able to bring back to do something in their city? Because some of this discussion started when we put together, town hall meetings about public financing in Portland, and then limits, yes, in the county. And there's really been just a ton of work done in the last couple of years. But where can people find out more if they're curious?
Sure, yeah. Honest-elections.org, honest-elections.org. That's our website. That's sort of the mothership for all of the stuff we've been working on here in Oregon. Some great videos that we've produced are up there, along with all the bills and all the organizations that we've gotten to be on board with us, local organizations. So if you have local organizations in your hometown that you see on those lists, those should be entities that you could approach to try to build a large, broad-based coalition around a campaign finance reform at your local level.